ever walked away from a conversation feeling completely drained, like your energy was stolen without warning? You try to stay calm, but inside, something feels off. That lingering heaviness, that mental fog, it's not in your head. It's real, and it often comes from just one thing: toxic people. But what if you had the power not just to resist them, but to disarm them completely? Welcome to today's episode, a journey into ancient Stoic wisdom and modern psychological insight. You're about to learn how to guard your peace like a Roman fortress, how to reclaim your energy, sharpen your emotional clarity, and face even the most difficult personalities with grace. This isn't just advice, it's armor for the soul. So take a deep breath. This is your moment of stillness before the storm. Let's begin. Part 1. Identify the threat. Know the poison before you drink it. In the ancient world, every citadel had guards, not to lock people in, but to keep chaos out. Their job was to study the horizon, to recognize danger before it reached the gates. Arch. In today's world, that citadel is your mind, your peace. And if you're not careful, you let enemies in through smiles, through shared history, through just one more chance. Toxic people may not carry swords, but their weapons are just as sharp. Constant criticism masked as just being honest. Guilt trips dressed up as care. Flattery used like a leash. Passive aggression that slices more deeply than a shout. Emotional inconsistency that keeps you guessing and doubting yourself. Seneca once wrote, "A person is not hurt so much by what happens as by their opinion of what happens." This is a gateway to liberation. It reminds us that the real battlefield is not out there, but in how we interpret what happens inside. Science agrees. A 2020 study published in the Journal of Occupational Health Psychology revealed that repeated exposure to toxic individuals increases cortisol levels, disrupts sleep cycles, and impairs immune function. Your body reacts as if it's under constant low-grade attack. Over time, your mind begins to adapt to toxicity like it's normal. That's why the first step to freedom isn't confrontation, it's recognition. Think of it like a map. If you don't know where the landmines are, you'll keep walking into them. Awareness is that map. It lets you move through life with precision, caution, and power. Here are the types to watch for. 1. The compliment and cut artist. One moment they praise you, the next they subtly shame you. 2. The victim commander. Everything happens to them, but somehow you always end up feeling guilty. 3. The social saboteur. They gossip behind closed doors, but smile in public. 4. The energy vampire. Every conversation feels like a transaction where you lose. And they all have one thing in common. They feed on your unawareness. So today, visualize your own inner citadel. Picture a towering stone gate with you as the calm sentry. Who gets close? Who drains you? Who leaves you second-guessing your worth? If you can name the toxin, you can guard your soul. To paraphrase Carl Jung, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. But now, you've seen the pattern, you've named the poison, and that changes everything. Your peace is your responsibility, and it begins not with resistance, but with recognition. If this resonates with you, if you're on the journey to become calmer, stronger, and more grounded, consider subscribing to the Chill Stoic. Here, we don't chase noise. We practice stillness. Part 2. Fortify your boundaries. Build the walls that toxic people cannot cross. Picture yourself walking the quiet halls of a Roman palace. Marble pillars, candlelight, stillness. And at the center, a man in full control of his empire. and more importantly, of himself. That man was Marcus Aurelius, and his greatest strength wasn't in battle, it was in building and defending the unseen, his inner fortress. You too are the ruler of such a place. Your peace is your kingdom, and your boundaries, they are the walls. But unlike stone, your boundaries don't block love. They filter energy. They decide who gets to stay, who must wait outside, and who should never be allowed near your inner courtyard again. Toxic people test those limits, softly at first. A little sarcasm here. An innocent jab there. A request that feels off, but you agree anyway just to avoid tension. Until one day, you realize the walls are cracked and your peace is leaking through. Brené Brown once said, "Daring to set boundaries is about having the courage to love ourselves, even when we risk disappointing others." Boundaries aren't rejection, they are a declaration. This is who I am. This is what I will no longer allow. Start with clarity. Ask yourself, what drains me? Who constantly crosses emotional lines? When do I feel like I'm betraying myself just to keep the peace? Write it down. These are not complaints, they are coordinates. Then comes the hard part, communication. But here's the truth. Boundaries don't need volume. They need calm conviction. Don't accuse. You're always negative. Instead say, I feel depleted when the focus is always on problems. I need space to reset. This is called nonviolent communication, a proven psychological framework that reduces defensiveness and increases understanding. Studies from the University of Washington show that when we use I feel statements, people listen more and resist less. Still, words alone are not enough. Boundaries are like garden fences. They must be checked and reinforced, or vines will grow through the gaps. So be consistent. If you say, I can't talk about that right now, and they push, you don't need to argue. You simply restate, I've made my boundary clear. If they keep crossing the line, limit access. If they mock your limits, walk away. If they punish you for saying no, understand. They were never seeking connection, only control. This isn't coldness, it's protection. The Stoics didn't preach isolation, they taught discipline of spirit. Seneca once said, no person has the power to have everything they want, but it is in their power not to want what they don't have. You don't need their approval, you need your alignment. And yes, some people will call your boundaries selfish. That's because they benefited from your silence. But you're not building walls to shut others out. You're building them to keep you intact. Because your soul is not a marketplace. It's not a hallway for anyone to wander through. It's not a field open for chaos. It's sacred ground. And you are its guardian. Part 3. Become uninteresting to the emotional barbarian. Picture this. A storm rages, lightning cracks the sky, and in the center of it all, a smooth gray rock, unmoved. That's what you must become when facing the emotional barbarian. The one who feeds off chaos, drama, and your reaction. Some toxic people don't just want control, they crave emotional fuel. Your frustration, your defensiveness, your rising voice, it feeds their fire. They poke, prod, and provoke, not always to win, but simply to pull you into their storm. That's where the Stoic-inspired Grey Rock method becomes your shield. Created by therapist Paul Friedman and embraced by emotional resilience coaches worldwide, this technique is both simple and powerful. You give them nothing, no spark, no emotion, no opening. To them you become boring. Responses like, I see, or that's interesting, delivered without tone or tension, make you emotionally invisible. Not cold, but neutral. Not rude, but unreachable. As Epictetus wisely said, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. And in this case, not reacting is your greatest form of control. Even neuroscience supports this. When you disengage emotionally, the amygdala, the brain's fear and reaction center, calms down, allowing your prefrontal cortex, the logic center, to take over. You return to clarity, they lose their grip. But beware, at first they may escalate. When you stop giving them emotional feedback, they might get louder, more cutting, even desperate. This is not a sign of failure. It's confirmation that your indifference is working. Do not match their energy, match your own values. If they insult you, say, okay. If they guilt trip you, say, that's your opinion. If they demand emotion, offer stillness. In doing so, you reclaim your power. As Viktor Frankl said, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Be that space. Be the stillness. Because when you become uninteresting to the emotionally chaotic, they eventually stop knocking. They seek drama. You give them serenity. And serenity is a language they can't understand. Part 4. The broken record technique. When saying no isn't negotiable. Imagine someone trying to wear you down, not with violence, but with persistence. They ask, you say no. They twist the question. You say no again. They change tactics, flatter, guilt, pressure, and slowly, without realizing it, your no begins to tremble. But not anymore. The broken record technique, rooted in Stoic resilience and modern psychology, is your defense against manipulation by repetition. It's a simple tool. Calmly, respectfully, and relentlessly repeat your stance. No drama, no justification, just quiet firmness. The Stoics, especially Epictetus, understood this kind of mental fortitude. He wrote, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. And the number one thing you control? Your word. Your no is sacred. It does not need to be justified to someone who is trying to override your boundaries." Psychologists call this method a verbal boundary enforcer. Research published in the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships shows that people who stick to concise, repeated refusals experience significantly less emotional fatigue in high-pressure interactions. So how do you apply it? Let's say someone keeps pushing you to attend an event you've already declined. You respond, "Thank you, but I won't be coming." They protest. You reply, "Like I said, I won't be coming." They guilt trip. You repeat, "I've already given my answer." No escalation, no emotion, just repetition. Eventually, like waves crashing against a cliff, their force fades, your rock remains. And this isn't just about saying no to invitations. It applies to manipulation in any form: financial pressure, emotional blackmail, unwanted advice. You choose your line and you hold it. Because each time you repeat your boundary, you are reinforcing your self-worth. Remember what Marcus Aurelius said, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." If your no is right and true, don't bend it to make someone else feel comfortable. You don't owe anyone your exhaustion. You don't owe anyone your compliance. You owe yourself peace. And sometimes peace sounds like a calm, steady voice, repeating the same simple truth, until it becomes unbreakable. Part 5. Don't take the bait. The Stoic art of indifference. Imagine a fisherman casting bait into a river, waiting for the fish to snap. Now picture someone in your life doing the same. Not with worms, but with passive-aggressive comments, guilt trips, or subtle jabs. They're not seeking truth. They're seeking reaction and bite. This is where Stoic indifference becomes your most powerful inner armor. Now, let's be clear. Indifference is not apathy. The Stoics never asked us to become emotionless machines. Instead, they taught selective emotion, choosing what deserves our attention and what does not. As Epictetus taught, some things are in our control and others are not. Your reaction, yours. Their bait, not. When someone throws emotional bait your way, a backhanded compliment, a jealous dig, or a veiled threat, they're counting on you to flinch, to rise, to play. But what happens when you simply observe? Neuroscientist Dr. Andrew Huberman explains that practicing emotional distancing activates the brain's prefrontal cortex, our center for reason and calm. The more we pause, the more power we retain. It's like stepping out of the river and watching the bait float by. No hook, no drama, just clarity. Let's say a coworker says, "Must be nice getting special treatment again." Instead of defending yourself or snapping back, try this. Pause. Look them in the eye, say nothing, or simply respond, "Interesting." You didn't match their energy. You didn't give them fuel. And in that stillness, you did something more powerful than argue. You broke the cycle. This kind of control is rare. It's magnetic. It makes people notice you, not because you're loud, but because you're unshakable. The writer Viktor Frankl, who survived the Holocaust, once said, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. Choose stillness. Choose to not get hooked. If the bait is guilt, let it sink. If the bait is shame, let it drift. If the bait is ego, let it pass. Because when you stop reacting to the provocations of others, you show the world that your peace is not up for sale. You become less a player in their drama and more the quiet observer, seated above the noise, untouched by the bait. That's not weakness, that's mastery. Part 6. The Art of the Non-Reaction. How Silence Becomes Strength. There's a kind of person who treats conversation like combat, lobbing insults like arrows, sharpening every word to cut deep. They thrive on drama, on loud reactions, on dragging you into their chaos. But what if you said nothing? What if you stood in calm, unshaken silence? That is the art of the non-reaction, a Stoic weapon more powerful than anger, more disarming than rebuttal. Marcus Aurelius, a warrior and philosopher, said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." That doesn't just mean kindness. It means restraint, stillness, the kind of silence that makes toxic people stumble. Because here's what they don't expect: a battlefield with no opponent. You see, verbal attackers are like tennis players. They serve anger across the net, expecting you to return it. But when you don't swing, the game dies. The silence? That's your power play. Psychologically, this strategy works. Dr. Judith Orloff, a psychiatrist and author of Emotional Freedom, explains that emotional manipulators feed on engagement. Silence is their kryptonite, she says. It interrupts their rhythm and forces them to face their own emotional emptiness. Think of a moment when someone tried to provoke you. Maybe they mocked you, rolled their eyes, or twisted your words. What would have happened if you had just paused, looked at them calmly, and said nothing? That silence speaks louder than any comeback. It says, "You don't control me." It says, "I'm not interested in your storm." It says, "My peace is not up for grabs." But make no mistake, silence is not passive. It's active strength. It's choosing not to dance with dysfunction. It's stepping outside the emotional theater and refusing to play your assigned role. Now, this doesn't mean you stay silent forever. In healthy relationships, communication is essential. But with toxic people, those who twist your words or mock your emotions, silence becomes a shield. And yes, at first, they may get louder, they may try harder, because your calm threatens their control. But remain still, stoic, solid, because as Seneca wrote, no man is free who is not master of himself. And in that moment of silence, you are more than free, you are untouchable. You're not stone-hearted, you're just no longer bait. And your silence? It's not weakness. It's wisdom in its purest form. Part 7. Limit your exposure. Protecting your peace isn't cowardice, it's wisdom. Imagine your mind as a quiet garden, a place of clarity, stillness, and soft inner light. You've pulled weeds, you've built a fence, but now someone keeps showing up, tracking in mud, shouting over the birdsong, disturbing the roots. You don't need to burn the garden. You just need to close the gate. That's what it means to limit your exposure, not from fear or avoidance, but from sacred wisdom. Because sometimes, no matter how calm you remain, someone else's chaos keeps finding its way in. The Stoics didn't isolate themselves from society, but they did believe in protecting the soul from unnecessary disturbance. Seneca advised, retire into yourself as much as you can. Only attend to what truly elevates your soul. And here's the truth, not everyone belongs inside your mental home. According to a study by the University of California, Davis, just 30 minutes of exposure to toxic interactions can cause cortisol spikes that last for hours. It's not just emotional clutter, it's biological warfare against your nervous system. When your body flinches before your mind does, that's not sensitivity. That's wisdom trying to speak through the skin. So what do? Start with physical distance if you can. Can you skip that lunch with the coworker who gossips? Can you change your seat, your schedule, or your phone habits? Can you limit the frequency of visits with the relative who drains you? You don't need a grand excuse. Your wellness is the reason. But when physical distance isn't an option, emotional distance becomes your greatest defense. This is the practice of mental detachment, not to numb yourself, but to free yourself. Let's say your friend constantly complains about life but never wants solutions. You listen, but don't carry. You offer a pause, not a promise. Or perhaps a sibling takes your joy as competition. Instead of hiding your light, you shine it elsewhere, around those who celebrate, not compare. When detaching emotionally, think of yourself as a tall lighthouse. The storms crash below, but you observe, you witness, and you remain rooted. Reframe their energy. Instead of, they're targeting me, try, they're struggling. That doesn't belong to me. Instead of, they're trying to pull me down, say, I don't need to join them in the basement. And no, it's not selfish. It's what Olympic athletes do every day, protect their energy like gold. They know that rest is fuel, silence is training, distance is preparation. Why would your emotional well-being deserve less? You were not born to carry the emotional weight of everyone you meet. You are not a reservoir for resentment. You are not the trash bin for another's unresolved story. You are here to grow, to create, to rise. And growth requires space. So don't wait for them to change. Don't hope they suddenly respect your limits. Instead, step back, gently, clearly, lovingly. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is less. Part 8. Build your support system. You don't have to do this alone. Even the strongest walls need allies behind them. Even the wisest Stoic needed a trusted circle. Because while protecting your peace is personal, Sustaining it takes community. You were never meant to face toxic energy in isolation. Seneca once said, "We are waves of the same sea, leaves of the same tree, flowers of the same garden." The Stoics understood that virtue isn't forged in solitude, it's refined through relationships rooted in truth and encouragement. So who's in your phalanx? Who stands beside you when the battle gets heavy? Science backs this up. A landmark Harvard study on adult development found that strong, healthy relationships are the #1 predictor of long-term happiness and emotional resilience, far more than income or fame. Support isn't just emotional, it's biological protection. Your brain releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone, when you're around people who truly see you. That hormone literally lowers cortisol levels, reduces inflammation, and helps regulate your emotions. So when you share your truth with someone who listens without judgment, you're not just venting, you're healing. That's why building your support system isn't optional, it's essential. Seek people who reflect your values, not your fears. Friends who lift your standards, not your anxiety. Mentors who challenge your thinking, not your worth. You don't need a crowd, you need a core, a few souls who remind you who you are when the world tries to make you forget. And sometimes, support doesn't look like advice. It looks like quiet presence. A walk, a warm cup of coffee, a message that says, "I'm here." But support works both ways. Be the friend you seek. Be the ear, the encouragement, the reminder of someone's light. Because giving support deepens your own strength too. And remember, just because someone is in your life doesn't mean they deserve access to your struggle. Choose your circle wisely. As the African proverb says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. You don't have to do this alone. Let others remind you that your peace is worth protecting and that you are worth fighting for. Part 9. Prioritize self-care. You can't pour from an empty cup. Imagine a warrior, skilled, resilient, and ready for battle. But beneath the armor, their body is weak, their mind exhausted, their spirit dim. That's what happens when you face the world without first tending to yourself. Self-care isn't selfish, it's strategy. The Stoics understood this well. Marcus Aurelius, an emperor burdened with constant wars and betrayals, still took time to reflect, write, and realign his spirit each day. In his meditations, he wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." And what colors are you giving your soul? In a culture that glamorizes hustle and sacrifice, taking care of yourself can feel like a luxury, but it's not. It's the foundation of your strength. Especially when dealing with toxic people who drain your energy like emotional thieves. Science proves this too. According to a study from the Journal of Psychosomatic Research, consistent self-care, like sleep, exercise, and quiet reflection, reduces anxiety, boosts immune function, and sharpens emotional regulation. You literally build mental armor when you rest. So, what does real self-care look like? Sometimes, it's movement. Walking, stretching, letting your body release what your mind holds. Sometimes, it's silence. Turning off your phone, lighting a candle, breathing into the stillness. Sometimes it's boundaries, saying no without guilt, choosing solitude over toxic company. And sometimes it's beauty, a warm bath, a favorite book, a playlist that lifts your soul. Self-care is not indulgence, it's maintenance, a Stoic sharpening their sword. Because when you're emotionally depleted, you become vulnerable to manipulation, fatigue, and despair. But when you're replenished, you make better choices, you see more clearly, you respond instead of react. And here's the truth, you teach others how to treat you by how you treat yourself. When you rush through life, ignoring your needs, others may too. But when you honor your limits, protect your energy, and rest without shame, you give others permission to do the same. Audre Lorde once wrote, Caring for myself is not self-indulgence, it is self-preservation. And for those who live in a world full of noise and pressure, self-preservation is a radical act of strength. So pause, eat, breathe, sleep, laugh, reflect. Not to escape the world, but to return to it whole. Part 10. Remember, it's not about you. The power of detachment from their pain. You walk into a room and something shifts. No one says it out loud, but the energy changes. A comment cuts a little too deep. A cold glance lingers a little too long. And part of you wonders, did I do something wrong? But the deeper truth is this. Their behavior is rarely about you. It's about them, their inner chaos, their unhealed wounds, and re-involved stories that have nothing to do with the person you are, but everything to do with the mirror you unknowingly become. When you show up with kindness, groundedness, or peace, it can threaten someone who's anchored in instability. To them, your calm is not comforting, it's confronting. You remind them of the work they haven't done. Psychologists call this emotional projection, a defense mechanism where people displace their unwanted feelings onto others. Instead of owning their anger, they assign it to you. Instead of facing their fear, they frame you as the threat. Sigmund Freud first explored this concept, and since then, hundreds of clinical studies have confirmed it. Many interpersonal conflicts are actually intrapersonal ones, just externalized. So what can you do? You stop absorbing and start observing. You stop blaming yourself and start stepping back. You remember that you are not a sponge. You are not a target. You are not their therapy session. Think of their behavior like stormy weather. It may swirl, roar, and strike, but it doesn't change the nature of the sky. You are the sky. Still, expansive, untouched. Yes, it's still hard. Yes, it still hurts. But that's why we must detach, not from love, but from responsibility for their pain. Epictetus said, if someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. It's not about blaming yourself. It's about reclaiming your power, because once you stop giving their chaos a home inside you, they lose access to your peace. So when someone lashes out, pause and remember, their outburst may be the echo of childhood trauma. Their judgment may reflect their own self-hate. Their silence may be their way of avoiding vulnerability. And none of it belongs to you. Release the guilt. Release the shame. Release the inner voice that says, if I were just better, they'd treat me better. No. You don't have to earn basic respect. You don't have to shrink to keep the peace. You don't have to fix a wound you didn't create. Maya Angelou once said, you alone are enough. You have nothing to prove to anybody. Let that truth sit in your bones. You can still care, but care with boundaries. You can still forgive, but forgive from a distance. You can still love, but love yourself first. Because their pain is not your identity. Their instability is not your fault. Their patterns are not your problem to solve. So next time someone throws their storm at your feet, smile quietly inside and remember, you are the sky. They are just weather. And this too shall pass. Part 11. Don't try to fix them. Stoic wisdom on letting people own their journey. You see their pain, you hear their toxic patterns, you watch them sabotage relationships, including yours, and something inside you whispers, maybe I can help, maybe I can fix them. But you can't. And that's not your failure, it's their responsibility. The Stoics made this very clear. Epictetus taught, don't demand that things happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do, and you will go on well. In other words, control what's yours, not what belongs to others. The impulse to rescue is human, especially when the person is someone you once loved or still care for. But trying to fix someone who isn't ready to grow is like watering cement, exhausting and ultimately futile. Psychologists call this the white knight syndrome. It's the need to save others in order to feel worthy or needed. But over time, it often creates codependent dynamics, where one person gives endlessly and the other takes without transformation. You begin by helping. You end up enabling. You lose yourself. So how do you stay compassionate without becoming their crutch? You step back with grace. You offer resources, not rescue. You model strength, but don't carry their weight. Recommend a book. Suggest therapy. Set a boundary. Then let go of the outcome. Because their healing journey? That's not your battlefield. Imagine your emotional energy as a garden. Every time you overextend to fix someone, you pull from your own soil, depleting what's meant to nourish your peace. Eventually, your own joy begins to wilt. And here's the hard truth. Some people are addicted to their pain. They don't want solutions, they want cycles. They resist change because change requires accountability. And not everyone is ready for that. You can love them and walk away. You can forgive them and still protect yourself. You can stop fixing and start freeing yourself. As the great Carl Rogers, pioneer of person-centered therapy, once said, "The curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change. The same goes for others." Your job is not to push their growth, it's to guard your own. Let go of the need to fix. Let go of the illusion that love alone can save them. Let go of the guilt when they choose the same destructive patterns again and again. And instead, focus on this. Who are you becoming in the process? Because the moment you stop trying to fix them is the moment you finally start healing yourself. Part 12. When to walk away. Choosing peace over chaos isn't weakness, it's wisdom. There's a moment in every storm where the rain no longer feels refreshing, it feels destructive. The roof leaks, the wind screams, and you realize it's no longer about surviving the storm. It's about leaving the house that keeps flooding. That's what it means to walk away. Not out of spite, not out of weakness, but out of a sacred decision to stop living where you're no longer safe. And yes, it's terrifying. You replay memories. You imagine what could have been. You think of all the effort you gave, the chances you offered, the red flags you painted white just to keep something alive. But then something inside you whispers, this is no longer love. This is self-abandonment. The Stoics never advocated for martyrdom in relationships. They taught clarity of judgment, alignment with reason, and courage to act. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The tranquility that comes when you stop caring what they say, or think, or do, only what you do." It's not about being cold, it's about being clear. When someone continues to violate your peace, ignore your boundaries, or feed off your forgiveness, it's not loyalty to stay, it's self-destruction. And here's the science. Dr. Lillian Glass, author of Toxic People, explains that chronic exposure to toxic relationships can lead to emotional dysregulation, adrenal fatigue, and eventually a lowered capacity to experience joy. Your brain gets rewired to expect chaos. You literally lose the ability to feel safe. That's why leaving isn't just emotional, it's biological, survival. And it doesn't have to be loud. You don't need to burn bridges. Sometimes, the exit is soft, silent. You slowly stop replying. You gently let the calls go unanswered. You retreat, not in fear, but in reverence for your soul. It may look like distance, but in reality, it's a return. The return to yourself. Remember, choosing peace doesn't make you cold-hearted. It means your heart has finally healed enough to choose itself. You can walk away without closure, without apology, without needing them to understand. Because closure isn't something they give you, it's something you give yourself. Walk away from the drama. Walk away from the blame games. Walk away from the endless cycles that only lead to deeper self-doubt. And yes, you will grieve. You will doubt yourself some days. But peace always whispers back, this is the right path. As poet Najwa Zebian once wrote, these mountains that you are carrying, you were only supposed to climb. So set them down and step forward, not because you're heartless, but because your heart has finally remembered its worth. Part 13. Forgive yourself. Let go of the weight that was never yours. You did your best. You tried to understand. You stayed longer than you should have. And now, you carry the heaviness not just of what they did, but of what you think you should have done differently. It's time to release that weight. It's time to forgive yourself. Because the truth is, healing doesn't begin with blaming them, it begins with freeing you. The Stoics knew this intimately. Marcus Aurelius, despite being an emperor, constantly reminded himself in his meditations, if you are pained by external things, it is not they that disturb you, but your own judgment of them. And it is in your power to wipe out that judgment now. And so, let's begin wiping it clean. Gently. You are not foolish for trusting. That shows your heart is open. You are not weak for staying. That shows your hope. You are not naive for caring. That shows your humanity. But now, you can choose something different. Psychologists call this process self-directed compassion, the practice of offering yourself the same grace you'd extend to a hurting friend. Studies from the University of Texas show that self-forgiveness significantly reduces symptoms of anxiety, depression, and even chronic pain. Yes, holding on to guilt literally hurts your body. So, how do you let go? Start by naming it. I'm angry I let them stay too long. I feel ashamed I kept quiet. I regret not walking away sooner. Now breathe. Those feelings are valid, but they're not forever. Next, reframe the story. Instead of I failed, say I grew. Instead of I was weak, say I was learning. Instead of I lost myself, say now I'm coming home. You did what you knew how to do with what you had at the time. That's not failure, that's the human experience. As Nelson Mandela once said, I never lose. I either win or learn. So carry the lesson, but leave the shame. Let go of the bitterness that never served you. Let go of the blame that never healed you. Let go of the version of you that thought peace required suffering. You are not what happened to you. You are what you choose to become after it. And today, you choose freedom. So forgive yourself fully, deeply, without conditions. And then walk forward, light, whole, and finally, free. You've now heard 13 Stoic strategies, not just to survive toxic people, but to rise above them. You've built boundaries, claimed silence, protected your peace, and reclaimed your power. Now carry this wisdom forward. Because in a world full of noise, reaction, and chaos, the calmest person in the room is always the most powerful. And that, dear listener, is who you're becoming. Stay grounded, stay noble, stay free.